Hello, friends. We have not perfected what I'm going to say to you every time I record, so I just will try some stuff. Hi, I'm Megan. I guess we're calling me the Mood Read Queen. I think we're probably all, a lot of us, Mood Read Queens, but no one's taken the name yet, and so I did it. The end. We are just going, I guess. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm having a good time, which is all that matters, right? So I figured what we would do today is I am in the middle currently, as I am filming this. I have listened to 11 audiobooks by an author, and I am super obsessed. So obsessed, okay? So I thought we would kind of, I don't know if we'll do a deep dive. This is also one that I'm going to kind of experiment with in terms of like putting stuff digitally, which I think is something that a lot of people do in these videos. And, you know, I just realized is that my computer's about to die. So we're just going to, like, on camera here, plug it in. There we go. Okay, cool. So the author that I've been reading a lot of recently is Roan Parrish. And I have 2 books of hers in paperback. The rest I've been listening to an audiobook. And I believe it's pronounced Roan Parrish. If it's not, I'm so sorry. But when I listen to the audiobooks, like 75% say Roan Parrish, and then like a few say like Roan Parrish, and I'm like, is it Rowan or Roan Parrish? She probably answered this somewhere on social media, and I should know because I've like stalked her to Kingdom Come recently, but apparently not well enough. So anyway, I've got 2 of her books, and this is from the Garnet Run series. So I'm gonna talk about this series first, and then I'll kind of give you a preview of the series that she has, and talk about why I think you should check her out, because I had never heard anyone talk about her before. And then just recently, after I had already read this entire series and like 3 more series, like I'm on literally 11 books now at this point. But I saw somebody talk about her on Instagram and talk about Swoon. You should check out her Instagram. She's pretty epic and gives great recommendations. But this was in several of her recommendation stories recently, and I was like, so good. So anyway, story time. Are you ready? Story time with Megan. So let's talk about this book real quick, okay? So a couple weeks ago, almost a month ago now, maybe even longer, there was an Audible sale. And I do try to use my library. One of the things that I'm working on, and that I'm glad that I have this account that I'll be hopefully posting on frequently, is using the library's resources, because I love books. I love buying books. I've always been a book buyer, not a book borrower. And that has caused like so many issues. Money is something that's kind of important, but they have great resources through Libby and Hoopla specifically in my area. And so I've been trying the last 6 months or so with a lot of goading and support from some of my friends to utilize more library resources. And I can say that a lot of the books I'll be talking about in this video should be hopefully available through your library. I found them on Hoopla, but if you don't know what any of those things are, please let me know. I mean, I know no one's going to watch this video for like forever, but you know, if you don't know what Libby and Hoopla are, I guess I can talk about that at some point. I would hope people know what they are. But anyway, of course, then there's Audible. And Audible had a sale, and it was like a $5 sale or something like that. But you couldn't participate in the sale unless you were a subscriber. So I was like, crap, I'm going to have to subscribe. So I subscribed for a month, and then because I've done Audible off and on, I just hadn't really, the audiobook bug hadn't bitten me yet. And now it has. So, anyway, I was scrolling through one day, and it was a 5-day sale, and I saw this book, and I was like, hold up. There are 2 dudes. They're holding hands. And if you watch my first video, and I will say this a lot, if it's gay, I'm gonna read it. And of course, I prefer it to be excellent representation, as we all do. But sometimes my standards are lower, and this is excellent. But so anyway, I was like, hello, I'm gonna read this, like, duh. It's $5. And I was trying to get more into audiobooks. So I bought it, and then a couple days later, I'm not really sure of the exact timeline, I ended up driving for about an hour and a half we were going to go swimming. Some friends and I, their parents have a pool. And so it was a beautiful day. We were going to go swimming. So I had an hour and a half drive, and I was like, and there are also these roads. I live in Missouri, and sometimes there are great highways, and sometimes there are like 1-lane roads to hell. Okay. And that's what I was on most of the time. So you have to kind of like let go, let Jesus take the wheel, whatever. I'm not religious. Just, I forgot to mention that if you are, good on ya, but not me. But anyway, so it's like these speed limits are so slow and everyone's so slow and you can't pass, and you're doing that thing where you're like trying to drive and you're like looking and you're like, oh, nope, not enough time. Ooh, let me look. And it's just like, it hurts your neck and you keep weaving around the road like an idiot. And you're like, you know what? Screw this. I am not doing this. So anyway, what's the word? Gave myself up to fate and time. And I was like, you're just going to listen to an audiobook? I was going to be fine. So I did. So I started this book. And the audiobook for this is not very long. It's like 7.5 hours, I believe. And at the time, I didn't know that I should have not bought it because it's on Hoopla, but whatever. I own it now, so that's fine. I don't mind at all. So anyway, I knew within the first 5 minutes that I was going to love this series. So why should you start the Garnet Run series? And then why should you keep reading all the Roan Parrish books, even when you run out of audiobooks, even then? Because there's ebooks too. So this book, I don't want to be dramatic here, okay? But I think this book changed my life, okay? Like, I also know I'm deep in obsession right now, so maybe my perspective is like, not accurate. But this book changed my life. So what's it about? I've given a summary of this book no less than 20 times in the last couple weeks, so let's hope I get all of the details right. So this book is about Jack, and Jack is in his late 20s. He is, oh, by the way, it is an LGBTQ plus book. They are gay. Likely. Well, I know Simon for sure is gay. I'm assuming. I don't actually know who's who on here. I think this is Simon, though. And then this would be Jack. Jack vaguely mentions kissing other people at one point in the book. Not during the book. He's not kissing other people during the book, but in his life. But they later very specifically like Simon and men. So we're not going to try to label Jack, though. Jack he can be whatever he wants to be. But anyway, so Jack is late 20s. He is a children's book illustrator and an artist. And for the past 8 months or so, he has been really struggling. And he hasn't felt like he can draw. And really the only solace he has is his animals. And he has several animals. And I'm not an animal person. I mentioned this in my very first intro. Hey, I'm a new booktuber. Come watch my videos video. But I'm not really an animal person. I did not grow up with animals. I had friends that had animals, and I've spent most of my life sort of like play acting what I think a person who likes animals should do. Like, oh, I'm going to pet the dog. You're so cute. Oh my God. And I think I've done that enough over like 30 years that I'm not even sure what I think anymore. Like, am I petting the dog and like talking in baby talk because I'm an animal person now, or because I just like tricked myself for years of faking it? I have no idea. But this book, oh my God, this book made me, I was like, you need an animal. You need to figure this out. So Jack takes his pack on walks, and he calls them the pack. It's so cute. And the pack consists of several animals. So we have 4 dogs. There's Bernard, who's a Saint Bernard. And also, I don't know anything about dogs. So like dog breeds and stuff, I'm just repeating what this book talks about. So there's Bernard, who's a Saint Bernard. There is Dandelion. I have no idea what Dandelion is. I'm sure they might mention it, but I've slept since then. And then there's Rat, who I would assume looks like a rat. And then there is Puddles. And Puddles is Lab, and he had my heart and soul. From the minute we met him, in like 3 minutes into this book, I was like, oh my god, I will die for you, Puddles. And Puddles is afraid of Puddles and a bunch of other stuff. It's so cute, guys. You don't even know. And then there's one cat, Pirate, and she likes to go on walks with them as well. He has other cats. I think there's Lewis and Mayonnaise and Pickles. There might be more. I think that's it. But anyway, so you meet all these animals, and he's going on a walk with them. And he's sort of like thinking about his life and, you know, feeling creatively stumped and troubled. And he ends up losing Puddles, and he has to go after him. And then Jack, unfortunately, like there's like a drop off, not like a cliff face, but like the drop off in the forest. And he falls, and he does find Puddles after he falls, but he breaks his leg. And he is in the hospital complaining. His older brother, Charlie, who is in book 2, and oh my god, Charlie, is worried about him. He brings him his sketchbook, but Jack hasn't told him that he's been creatively frustrated and troubled, and because he doesn't want to cause any issues, and he doesn't want to worry his brother, and so he gets home and is morose because he can't walk his dogs, and Pirate, the one cat who wants to go on the walk, and that's like the one bright spot. The bright spots, I guess, because there are multiple walks per day. And so he gets on this app called PetShare. And PetShare is, I don't know if this is a real app. I had a friend look it up for me. I think it might be like real, but maybe used differently. Basically, if you like pets, but maybe you can't have them, or you want to spend time with them, maybe you pet sit, you can walk dogs or whatever. And so he ends up matching with this guy named Simon. And Simon is 26, and he is a graphic designer. He has his own online business after working for a while in a more corporate setting. And Simon has severe social anxiety. And so when he meets Jack, he really struggles to like verbally express himself. Simon's not a small guy. He's smaller than Jack, but he like hunches and tries to make himself smaller. And a lot of people haven't understood him his whole life. And basically the story at its core is about Jack and Simon getting to know each other, whether it's through text where Simon feels more comfortable, whether it's allowed in person. And they're both very at peace with their own sexualities, which I appreciate. I realize sometimes you just want to read a book that doesn't have homophobia and that doesn't have horrifically depressing storylines relating to that. And those are all incredibly valid. I have read a ton of YA books and adult books alike that deal very seriously with those issues. And I think that's important. But I also think it's important to see it as just representation of real life. And I love that about this book. It's not fantasy. It's these characters have issues, but they don't derive from their sexuality. And I love that. So anyway, the book is about their romance. And, you know, Simon comes over twice a day to walk the dogs, and they talk more and more. Simon lives with his grandmother because his grandfather died a few years ago, and she needed the help and support. And that's why he can't have an animal, because she's allergic. And it's just one of the most precious books I've ever read. It's quite short. I didn't realize how small it was when I was listening to it. I mean, obviously it was a 7.5 hour audiobook, which is a shorter audiobook, at least from my experience. One of the longer audiobooks I've read was like 24 hours. And so I was like, oh God, that only 7.5 hours? Like, hell yeah. But one thing that I saw immediately in this book and in this series, the second book is called Best Laid Plans. I don't have the paperback of that. And the third one is The Nights on Knockbridge Lane, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But what I love about this series, and honestly with a lot of her books, is they feel very real, and they talk about a lot of important issues, and they don't feature what I would consider to be ridiculous, frustrating third act breakups or conflicts. If those did happen, it felt very authentic, and I was not annoyed at them, which I think is important. There's no, oh, I overheard you saying this, you must have meant this about me, blah, blah, blah shit. Like, this, there's a conflict in this, but it's mostly about them figuring out how they're going to be together and if they're going to be together and what that looks like. Because once Jack's leg heals, you know, he wants to get out and about and like leave the house occasionally and maybe see his friends, he's struggled to keep up with them in recent months because he's felt depressed about his art. And when he meets Simon, he starts kind of processing what happened and why he's been struggling with his art. And then Simon's never going to be super great with people, and that is something that he knows about himself. But he worries that that's something that Jack isn't taking seriously enough. Because when Jack is at home and they can't go anywhere, they're fine. But if Jack wants to get out and be more active, and that may not be something that Simon wants to do. And I just can't say enough about this book. It was amazing. I cried in one scene in particular. Simon is a virgin and he's never been in a relationship before. And there's this beautiful scene where he basically has, not a panic attack, but he definitely has a negative reaction after they kiss for the first time because he thinks he's messed it up. And Jack is incredibly calm and dealing with that situation. And it was such a beautiful example of a relationship, the way they communicate. I cannot say enough good things about it, honestly. So good. And it's the first book in a series. And so I would highly recommend the audiobooks as well. I can't remember who read the audiobook for this one. I'm still kind of getting in the groove of audiobooks, so I don't know a lot of audiobook people by name yet. But he did an incredible job differentiating between both Simon and Jack, particularly with Simon and the way that Simon can stutter at times. Just incredibly well done, and I was very impressed and moved. So, highly recommend this book. And then, this is where I'm going to try to put the digital version of Best Laid Plans over there. We'll see. But Best Laid Plans is the second book in the Garnet Run series. This is her most recent trilogy. And I didn't know I was starting with that. You know, you never know when you're picking up books randomly. But it is about Charlie. And Charlie is Jack's older brother. And guys, I promise, I won't go into every single book she's written, but I do want to talk in depth about this series because it is the series that got me most interested in her work. And then I'll kind of briefly summarize the other books I've read by her, just so you kind of have an idea if you want to check out one series or another. So the second book, Best Laid Plans, that is about Charlie, Jack's older brother. And this book kind of broke me. It was wonderful. It follows Charlie. He is the owner of a hardware store that was owned by Charlie and Jack's father before their parents died in a car accident 2 days before Charlie turned 18. And so he has been the primary caregiver for Jack, who was 13 at the time, since he was 18 years old, and now he's 36. And Jack is a wonderful person, but he doesn't really realize the extent to which Charlie sacrificed himself, his life, his dreams to take care of Jack. And even Charlie doesn't realize how much he's sacrificed. And I just was incredibly moved by this book. So the second male character, most of these are going to be queer, gay characters. Rye is pansexual, I believe. There is a non-binary character as well that's introduced in this book, and I really hope they get their own book. But I don't think it's going to happen, and I'm kind of afraid, but we'll see. So, anyway, Rye is, I think he's in his 20s. We don't really find out, really. Did I say that Charlie's 36? He's 36. And so Rye is he's moving from Seattle. He's kind of moved around his whole life. He hasn't really felt, he loves Seattle, but he's never really had a home. And he finds out that he inherited this house in Garnet Run, Wyoming, from a grandfather he didn't know that he had. And so he decides to basically up and leave. He brings his cat, Marmot. There's a really funny story about why she's called Marmot. And it's Rye's wonderful. And he comes and he finds out that the house is actually trash. And it probably should be demolished. And he decides, well, he has nothing left. Like, he came for this. So he starts going to the hardware store that Charlie owns and starts trying to fix it up himself. But, like, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's watching YouTube videos, and it's not great. So Charlie is like, hey, what do you need? Like, I can do this stuff. Like, I've built things. I've renovated things. Let me help. And that's kind of where they start. But it's very quickly, it's not about building the house, right? Like, they get a bunch of people to help. You get to see Jack and Simon again. Oh my God, so cute. And also, I don't know if I said it, but like, there's some like really sexy, spicy scenes in these books, and it's so good. So just also the audiobooks, when you listen to them, commitment. These people don't get paid enough, is what I'm saying. But anyway, in Best Laid Plans, I believe Charlie is gay, but Charlie has sort of cut himself off, not even maybe knowingly, from that part of himself after he had a little bit of a fling with this boy when he was in high school, who was also on the football team. And he just pushed that away because he couldn't think about it. Other things are more important. And now he's so sort of divorced from that he doesn't really know what he wants. He knows that he likes Rye. And Charlie's like this big, strapping guy. And Rye is sort of like gangly. And I mean, it looks like he listens to like goth music. He doesn't, which I'll talk about the music he listens to here in a little bit. But they're two totally different people. But Rye, another thing that she does really, really well, Roan Parrish, is having the characters really openly communicate. And I love that. And so Charlie really struggles to know what he wants and how to even communicate that. And so when he and Rye start, and Rye doesn't have a great relationship with his parents, but this is less about Rye's development and more about Charlie's, although Rye does get some development. Charlie, there's a scene where Rye's like, you know what? Let's figure out what works for you, like what you're even interested in. And so they make a list, or Rye makes a list, and Charlie's like, I can't look at it. Like, and so he turns away, and Rye goes through the list. And it's everything, like all sorts of stuff. Any sort of any act that could be remotely sexual. It goes from like kinky to vanilla to everywhere in between. And he reads through it, and some of them are very specific, some of them are more vague, and he's just getting Charlie's answers. And Charlie's really thinking, yes, no, like he has knee-jerk reactions to some of them. Some of them he's like, maybe, but not right now. And it was, I think in some books that might come across as hokey or ridiculous. It was incredible. It opened my eyes to a lot of things, honestly, me thinking about the conversations that you need to have with a partner. And so I just thought it was so well done. And Charlie does end up finding something that really works for him. And it's so good. Like, it's so sexy, and Rye is so into it, and Charlie is so into it, even though at first he doesn't want to understand why he's into it, or even that he is. And it's spanking, and it's epic, and it's just wonderful. It's beautiful. Like, it's weird to say, but it's like incredibly intimate. And anyway, it's just wonderful, and Charlie has my whole heart and soul. He and Simon, like Simon from the first book, Charlie from the second one, I love them both dearly, and they both broke me a little bit. Charlie's never been in a relationship before, and he doesn't know how to do that, and and Rye's with a lot of people, and it's just the way they communicate with each other is just incredible. And of course there are pets, and so Charlie has a cat named Jane. She's a Maine Coon, and then of course Rye has Marmot. And there is some great non-binary representation as well. There is a character named River that Rye befriends. There's a group of teenagers who were hanging out at Rye's grandfather's house. And as they start fixing it up, obviously they're going to have to find a new place to hang out. And one of those characters is named River. And so River is non-binary. We don't get a ton of information about them. But what I love is that it doesn't become a thing. Like, there's not even a conversation when Rye meets River about pronoun usage, which I think I said earlier. Maybe I said this in a different video. Pronouns are important. If you don't think that, get out of here, okay? Like, seriously. Try your best to use the appropriate pronouns for a person. That is the least you can do. And no one in the book messes up. Like, they don't even say, there's not a conversation about, ooh, this is River, they're non-binary. No, it's just like, using the correct pronouns from the beginning. It's incredible. I loved it. So anyway, it's just wonderful. Charlie and Rye's relationship. Is Rye going to move into this house that they're fixing up? Or what are they going to do with the house if he decides to move in with Charlie? So good. And then the third book. So the first one, maybe the second one. I don't know. The first one is published by Carina Press, who does primarily LGBTQ+ publications. And then I don't know about the second one. I think the second one as well, but I can't remember. And then the third and fourth one are through Harlequin Special Edition, but they're the first queer Harlequin Special Editions, which I think is so cool. And so it's interesting because of course the series is now published in two different ways, but this is the third book. There was one more coming out, and I can't remember who the main characters are. No, I do. One of the main characters is a character that is introduced as a friend of one of the main characters in this one. And I was so bummed because I wanted there to be 5 Garnet Run books because I need River to get their own book. But gosh, please, Roan Parrish, if you're watching this totally randomly, I need River's story today. River's young though, so it's okay. Anyway, so this book I gave the first 2 5 stars. Granted, I did not read the physical books, or the Kindle, like ebooks. I do love an ebook. I listened to both of them, and I did not separate my audio performance review from the book itself. So I thought they were incredible books. I thought they were so, so well done. This book I did give 4 stars. It's still really good, but it doesn't, the characters do go through some stuff, and that's great. Like, this was a lighter book. It's a Christmas book, and I love Christmas and lights and everything. But the other ones, you've got Simon with anxiety, and you've got Charlie with something, this block that he really has to chip through. And these characters have less to deal with, and that was really nice to read about. But there was less of a sucker punch to the gut as well. So this is about Adam, and Adam is originally from Garnet Run, and he moved after high school when he met a boy in high school, and they moved together to go to college. And now he's just moved back with his daughter. Her name is August, but they call her Gus. She is so smart and funny and sweet and hilarious, and she loves science, and I love her. And they move across the street from this guy named Wes, and Wes is sort of like this sort of gruff. He buzzes his hair, and everyone thinks he's like all these stories. He's a werewolf. He's a vampire. He only comes out at night. And Wes is a scientist, and so Adam starts working at the hardware store because Rye used to work there, and now is doing something else full time, which is great. And so Adam is working at the hardware store. He loves photography, but he is not in a place to be able to pursue that right now. And he is, when he left, I think Colorado is where they were from. I believe he was married. I think they said that, but if not, his long-term partner, they ended up breaking up. And that was Gus's other father. And he didn't want Gus anymore. Gus is the daughter of Adam's older sister, and she wasn't going to be able to raise her. And so when she was born, not long after, Adam said that he would take her, and he didn't talk to Mason, I think is the name of his ex, about it. And so Mason just kind of accepted it, but he wasn't super happy about it. And then the last few years were really rough, and they'd actually broken up and were just living in the same house until it became very clear that Mason didn't really want to be involved in Gus's life anymore. And so that's when Adam decided to move back to Garnet Run. That way his sibling, River, can be involved in Gus's life. So he meets Wes because his daughter, Gus, breaks into Wes's basement where he has like all his experiments. And Adam makes her apologize, and he sees Wes. And this is just a precious book about Christmas time. Gus wants all the lights in the world for their house, but Adam can't afford them, and he has an Instagram following because of his photography. People start sending packages of lights. He and Wes connect. Wes loves Gus, and they both love science together. And Wes has many random animals, none of which are, unfortunately, cats or dogs. One of them is a tarantula named Betty, who comes over for sleepovers with Gus, and it terrifies the living daylights out of Adam. He hates it, but Gus loves it. It's just so precious. So anyway, that's that series. So, hold on, let me pause, because my battery's about to die. Give me a sec. Okay, hopefully that works out. So these two books, along with Better Laid Plans, or Best Laid Plans, that's part of the Garnet Run series. It's small town. I know small town romances are a thing. I'll be honest, I'm not super into them. I don't read a lot of them, but this really worked for me. And the representation was flawless in terms of queer representation, but also mental health, anxiety. There's some other ones probably, but there's those. Then, after I listened to the audiobooks of that series and become truly and completely obsessed, I knew I had to keep listening. And so I decided, I checked out, obviously, Roan Parrish's website. I was on Goodreads. I was on Instagram. And I kind of had to choose where I was going to go. Within her backlist, I guess is what a fancy booktube term that I didn't know a couple months ago. And so I actually read, and I'm going to try to put it over here. The next book I read was actually called The Remaking of Corbin, Wale. And this is what I love about her books. They take place in the same universe. Very Julia Quinn-esque, but totally different. So like Julia Quinn, if you've read historical romance, all her books take place in the same universe. There might be character crossover. The Bridgerton, siblings might show up in a non-Bridgerton book, in passing, talking to another character. And it's very much like that. And so the Remaking of Corbin, Wale actually came out a few years before, I think 2017. And I believe this came out in 2020. Yeah, 2020. So anyway, it's about Corbin, Wale. And Corbin, Wale is Jack from Better Than People, Jack's favorite artist and graphic novelist. And Corbin, Wale wrote a book called 2 Moons Over, which I wish existed in real life because it sounds amazing. And so when I found out there was a book about Corbin, I immediately decided to go read it. And so I listened to it, and I gave it 4 stars. I don't do half stars, by the way. Maybe I'll start, but just to be honest with you, Goodreads doesn't do half stars. And I don't want to have to go back and re-rate like a bazillion books. So I'll tell you like if I think it's closer to one number or the other. But I don't do half stars. So I gave it 4 stars. Primarily because the character of Corbin, Wale is problematic. And the reason I say that is because I don't want to say this, I don't want this to come out wrong, but he's weird. Corbin is weird. And he's weird in a way that is like, dude, all respect to you, I need you to go talk to a professional. Okay? Like a professional. So Corbin, I can't remember where this book takes place. But he has issues holding down a job. He loves to draw. Has been openly gay since high school. Doesn't talk to a lot of people. Doesn't have friends really. And he meets this guy named what is his name? Is it Alex? I think it's Alex. I feel bad, but I think it's Alex. And I think it is. And he is Alex is coming from New York City. And he's moving back home. He and his boyfriend broke up. It was a fine breakup, nothing too, painful. And his mom has a, I think like a sandwich shop or something, or coffee shop, but he's going to turn it into a pastry shop, I think is what's going on, and with coffee. And so Corbin's been coming there for quite a while. And so once they do the renovations, and Alex thinks, hey, I'm gonna be here like maybe for a little while, maybe a year or two, and then I'll find something else. No. Pretty early on, I think he realizes that this is where he wants to be. And so he notices Corbin. Corbin's fascinating. Corbin's beautiful. He's strange and interesting. And he's not like anyone Alex has ever met. And so they start this very slow burn friendship. It takes quite a long time for them to get together. Corbin, it's told through both of their perspectives. I should be mentioning that as we go. But some books are only told by one person's perspective. Some go back and forth. This particular book does go back and forth, but in large sections, not chapters. And the prose is beautiful. Something that you'll notice about Roan Parrish pretty early on is that her books are incredible to read and to listen to. It's like music. Listening to the remaking of Corbin Wale was a transcendent experience, honestly. It was incredible. But Corbin does have some issues, and it took, I think, too long, in my opinion, for Alex to really realize the extent of those issues, because he's so patient. And I'll be honest, I would like to pride myself on being a good person. I'm a teacher. I like to help people. I'm compassionate. I don't think I could have reacted to Corbin in the way that Alex does. I really don't think I could. It was hard because Alex is just unceasing in his support and his patience, and Corbin really needs help, really, so much, and he does not get it. I think, no, that's a different book, sorry. So by the end of this book, I was thinking, can this guy go to therapy? I need him to. And he doesn't. And he does get better, of course, and of course it's a happily ever after. All of these books have that. But anyway, I will say, it was very, very, very cool to get Corbin's story pre-writing Two Moons Over, because you get to know the artist who wrote Jack's favorite book. So very cool. Then after that series, I got started on the Riven series. And there are 3 books in the Riven series. And the reason I went to the Riven series next is because in book 2 of the Garnet Run series, Best Laid Plans, Rye's favorite band is this band called Riven. And their lead singer is Theo Decker. And in that book, I think he's gifted from a friend, maybe River, Theo's solo album. And so when I realized that the first book in the Riven series is about Theo Decker and Riven, I about shit myself, okay? I was so excited. So Riven is the sort of the rock star romances. And so they are, I will not talk in as much depth about these. I love them so much. The first one I gave 5 stars, I think. Honestly, it's so hard because this book hit me so hard, and so did the second one, that it was a struggle for me to really rate the rest of them. But they're all rock star romances for the most part. So you have Theo, who is the lead singer of Riven, this incredibly newer, popular band, and he meets Caleb, who is a recovering addict. He's gone to rehab 4 times. The last time was a year ago. And he has tried to stay away from music because for him, music is connected to addiction. And, but he meets Theo and they can't stay away from each other. Even when Theo's touring, even when Theo's having issues figuring out if he even wants to stay with the band, they still, they can't stay away. And so they have to work through some very real issues though. Does Caleb, does he feel comfortable enough in his recovery, that he can pursue this relationship? Is love the same thing as obsession and addiction? There's just some important conversations. And then the second book is called Rend. The second book is called Rend. And that is about Reese, who is Caleb's best friend, former boyfriend, off and on for several years, and his husband, Matt. And you meet Reese and Matt in the first book, in Riven. And they're newlyweds at that point. And this book is a marriage and trouble romance. I have never had good luck with that, I'll be honest. It hasn't really been my vibe. But this book really did a great job. Because it's about what happens when Reese, who's a studio musician primarily, and he and Caleb went on tour quite a bit when they were younger, and they're still very close, and Reese has been a huge support for Caleb as he's been, trying to get back on his feet. He meets Matt and they have this whirlwind romance and they get married. And so when we meet them in this book, they've been together for maybe a year and a half. And they're in a good place. But Matt comes from the foster care system and he has a lot of abandonment issues and things that he doesn't open up as much about as he should. And because Reese is he's like Thor. They describe him, Matt's like, you're Thor. He's happy and go lucky and he loves to eat. And Matt doesn't like what happens when he tells Reese about his past because he can see how much it pains him to know that stuff. And so he kind of doesn't straight up lie to him, but he'll lie by omission, or he'll let Reese assume certain things about what actually happened in his life, his mother's abandonment, because he doesn't want to hurt his husband. But that ends up causing issues because Matt struggles while Reese is on tour. And then when he comes back, they have to work through everything. And it was an amazing book. And of course, you get to see Theo and Caleb. And it's all about communication. And Roan Parrish, she killing it on the communication front. I mean, and also, all these books are fucking sexy as hell, okay? They are like driving in your car, sweating a little bit, hoping that you don't do something embarrassing while you're driving, because these books are so hot, but also so personal. And then the third book is about Huey, who is Caleb's sponsor and also one of Reese's friends. And he's in his late 30s, and he is the owner of the bar where Caleb and Theo met. And he is also a recovering addict. He is he's a sponsor for Narcotics Anonymous, and I can't remember. I think he was pain pills, and it's been a long time for him that he's been in recovery. But he put a lot of routines and procedures in his life to keep him on track when he started when he went into rehab. And it's been like 10 years or 12 years or something like that. But he hasn't moved on from those. And so he can be very rigid. And he ends up meeting this guy named, Felix. That's his name, Felix. And is it Felix? Yeah, Felix. And Felix's sister auditions to be a part of Riven because Theo ends up leaving the band. And Huey and Felix are really into each other. And Felix has sacrificed a lot to take care of his mom and his family, and his sister, who's older than him, and he doesn't really know what he wants. And so both of them in this book are trying to figure out what they really want and what they can have. And I also, by the way, left reviews for all of these pretty extensively on Goodreads. So when I figure out how to link all that stuff, I definitely will. So the Riven series was great. It really depends what your cup of tea is. I will be honest with you. I think it's so cool. The way I appreciated the way I read these, because I was able to kind of get, oh, look, there's a tidbit about Corbin, there's a tidbit about Theo, and then I got to read their books. And it was also interesting to kind of watch the evolution of the things that Roan Parrish talks about. Because everything she talks about, she sounds like she is an expert. And the way that she writes about music in the Riven series was incredible. After the Riven series, I ended up going to her very first trilogy, which is called the Middle of Nowhere series. It does have a 2-book series that is a spin-off series that takes place within that very specific universe, called the Small Change series. And I'm in the middle of that first book right now. I've read almost all of them. She has like a few more that I haven't read that are on ebook that I haven't read yet. But all her audiobooks I'm almost all the way through. And the Middle of Nowhere series is also a wonderful series. It is her first series, so I can definitely tell, how she has improved with pacing and character development. But her lyricism, the beauty of her writing is still there. And I won't get into these a ton. I will say, I would encourage you to read every book in order. So, if one of these sounded better, but it was in the middle of a series, I would still encourage you to read every book in order, because it's so important, especially with the Middle of Nowhere and the Small Change series, because they very much are overlapping. So you've got the first book, which is about Daniel and Rex. Daniel is just got his PhD, moved to a very small town in Michigan, and meets Rex, and there's more to it than that. But it's basically him teaching at this small town university, and he and Rex figuring out if this is something that they want to pursue, and what happens if Daniel ever wants to move. Daniel's from a very a family that has a lot of toxic masculinity. His father's an asshole. His brothers and his father are all auto mechanics. And towards the end of the book, there is an unfortunate tragedy where Daniel ends up finding out some shocking information, and it really is painful for him. His family probably has the darkest history out of all of the families that we've read about in any of Roan Parrish's series. The second book is about Daniel's brother Colin. I knew immediately that this was going to be the book that I loved the most from the series, and I definitely did. The audiobook it's called Out of Nowhere. Colin's book is just incredible. Spencer Goss, I remember his name because he's only done 3 audiobooks. I looked him up and I was pissed because I was like, where are your other books, dude? He kills it. It's an incredible experience. I cried multiple times, and I'm not even sure if I was crying because of what he said or how he said it. I mean, just incredible. But Colin has some really heavy internalized homophobia. He's basically lived his life to please his father, and has been a horrific, cruel brother to Daniel. And their other brothers have sort of taken his lead, and treated Daniel horribly as well. And of course, when Daniel came out and their father had an adverse reaction, Colin sort of even further closeted himself. And so it was a really hard book to read, but it was beautiful. I loved it. Every one of these books has just these moments that you're like, man, I wish I wasn't listening to the audiobook so I could find the quote and save it, because it's so many great ones. And then the last book in the series was, in my opinion, the weakest book I've read from Roan Parrish so far. I still liked it. It's called, what's it called? There's Middle of Nowhere, Out of Nowhere, and then Where We Left Off. And Where We Left Off is about Will and Leo. Leo is a kid who graduated high school early. He meets Daniel in the first book. They become fast friends, but Daniel's very wary about him being when Daniel, in that first book, Rex's ex Will comes back to town from New York to visit his sister, and he comes to visit Rex not knowing that he's seeing someone, and there's a kind of small conflict there, but Leo ends up meeting Will and falling for him very quickly, and then Will is gone again, and Leo puts himself through a year of community college in this small town, and then he goes to NYU, and he wants an education. He's a really smart kid, had great test scores, but really he wants Will. And I struggled with this book quite a bit. It was one of those that if I had been holding it, I'm not sure how quickly I would have been able to get through it. But again, there were just so many beautiful elements. Leo was romantic. He has certain ideas about romance and relationships that aren't necessarily super accurate, and Will is very quick to point that out to him. But they become very fast friends. They pick up where they left off in terms of friendship, but Leo is in love with him, and Will kissed him before he left almost 2 years ago, and he won't give up on that. And I really liked it, but I personally am not at peace with where they end up. It wasn't exactly what I was looking for, which I think is fine. But I think it's also a sign that series, it is, I think, a little more clear that really is her first series, although it's still a great series. So then there's the Small Change series, and the first book is about Ginger. And Ginger is Daniel's best friend. She is a tattoo artist. She's Jewish, and she is probably bisexual. She has dated both men and women, and it's about her romance with this guy named Christopher, who opens a sandwich shop not far from the tattoo parlor that she owns. And she's pretty closed off. She hasn't had great relationships, great experience, and so that's kind of where we're at. I'm not done with it yet. And, but I'm enjoying it quite a bit. And it does very heavily, again, overlap with the rest of the Middle of Nowhere series. So, like, right now, like, Ginger's story is pretty much happening parallel to Daniel's story. And most of book 2, Out of Nowhere, Colin's book, is taking place at the same time as Daniel's story. And then a little after. So just keep that in mind. Will and Leo's definitely takes place after. And then the last book in the series is called something about the blues. Oh, shoot. I can't remember now. I should have looked it up and written it down, but I didn't. And that is about Christopher's brother Jude, who we learn about in Small Change, in Ginger and Christopher's book, that Jude tried to commit suicide and has had depressive episodes. He struggles with that, and is currently in the hospital for that. And so I'm sure that will be a heavy book to listen to, but I'm excited about it. So that's what I've listened to so far from her. I have read parts of Better Than People in the paperback, but I can pretty safely say to you that her books are well written. Really, they are lyrical and beautiful. And though they might be smaller, like Better Than People is coming in at less than 300 pages, it didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel like it was less of a story. It wasn't insta-love. She doesn't do that. She does a really great job developing these characters and these stories. And I'm very much looking forward to reading the rest of her books. She's stated that there are sequels planned for some books that haven't come out yet. Potentially a book about Gareth, who is Alex's best friend in the remaking of Corbin Wale. I would love to see Gareth's story. He is fleeing an abusive relationship with his husband in the remaking of Corbin Wale, and I would love to see his development as a character. And then, of course, I'd love to see River's story from the Garnet Run trilogy, or series. It's not a trilogy anymore. But anyway, I just love these books so much, and what I love about books, just in general, is that you can just find books at the right time for you. I found these at a time that I was not looking for them. I found the first book in an Audible sale, and now it's been not even a month. I have listened to almost 11 full audiobooks, and it's been an incredible experience, and I've actually talked so much about them that I've, convinced a lot of my friends to read them. And I would love to hear if you have read any of Roan Parrish's books, or if you're planning on reading them, which series sounds like the series that you might enjoy the most. I just highly, highly recommend. And the audiobooks are amazing. They are on Hoopla, at least in my my library. I did have to purchase the Middle of Nowhere series, though, because they didn't have that. But I'll gladly do that and support. So, I guess that's it. Have a great night. I have no idea what to say about this. It's nighttime for me. You could be watching this in the morning. I don't know. Keep being awesome. Keep reading books. Let me know if you read any of hers, because I would love to talk about it with you. Okay, bye.